Hey, Juwan, appreciate your time. Happy New Year. Um, After the McNeese State loss, Terrence was saying a big issue was your guys' one-on-one defense. I guess just looking back at the film, I guess just what did you see from your team's one-on-one defense in that game? And I guess just how much was that a focus in practice this week?
Yeah, looking at the game while it was happening in live action, and I knew that there was nothing schematic that McNeese State was doing from an offensive standpoint that caused us to be late or we were surprised by. But when it boiled down to is what Terrence just mentioned, it was just one-on-one breakdown, one-on-one, blow by, one-on-one. A guy end up, laying the ball in the rim and reacting too late, and that cannot happen. All that's based on is being alert and also bringing effort, and that's something that we had missing that night was we did not have bring the effort that we needed in order to compete at a high level.
Right. And I guess what do you think makes someone a good one-on-one defender? And I guess just how do you go about molding
Yeah.
your players into that?
Great question. One of the things that I'll always, like go back to is, as a competitor, if you're competitive like you say you are, you take ownership of guarding one-on-one by taking that one-on-one challenge. And competitors are prideful. Competitors don't want to, feel like they're being embarrassed by a guy, breaking them down on off a dribble move, uh, one dribble, two dribbles to the basket. A competitive guy is always going to do whatever he can as far as studying uh, players' strengths or weaknesses. And then when they get out there on the floor, they know who they're guarding and what that particular guy has to offer as a skill standpoint and how and what to, send them to his weekend or make sure that you gap them a certain type of way. And we're all like our studying on the film as well as personal studying with our scouting report. We wasn't dialed in like we have been in some other games.
Right. And Terrence said he feels a lot of it comes down to heart. I guess is that something you can coach, or is that something you can pull out of
You have
guys?
that within. Heart, I never did a good job of, injecting heart in anyone. I don't think that's possible. That's something that I've always said, being a player as well as moving into the coaching ranks, that heart is something that you got to have as a player because that comes back to that what I mentioned earlier. If you're a competitor, that's what competitors lay their toughness on, and that's their heart because they are prideful and as well as they are and do whatever it takes to win.
Hey, Juwan, I guess building off of that, have you had to challenge anybody, or I know you've always lauded how prideful they all are and how hard they've all worked. That's never been a question before in the past. I guess where do you stand now?
Yeah, challenging. I'm always going to continue to keep challenging our guys, and that's in practice, in film, pointing out teaching moments on where you have to take ownership and accountability. But there is like I alluded to earlier, a defensive breakdown where there's a one-on-one blow by, and what are the things and how we can, of course, improve in that area. And always, what I've done in practice is, have drills that will, of course, help players as well as a team get better in areas that I feel that we are needs improvement in, and some would consider weaknesses.
Juwan, hey, happy New Year. I wasn't at the last game. What is Jalen's status? Yeah, is it related to his surgery, and what's his status for tomorrow, I guess?
Yes, Jalen's health. He last game, it was more of a concussion protocol because in the Florida game, he and I don't want to misquote, but Chris Williams can of course give you that information better than I can. But I know it's truly a concussion protocol. And then coming off the break, uh, he is still had been in the concussion protocol for a few days. And that, as we all know on this Zoom, is that's a very delicate um, injury, and where you have to, of course, take your time with that and be respectful of players' health. And I'm always going to be that guy who never going to force a guy to, or when they're not healthy, not ready to go out there on the floor and play. I'm always the type of guy, a coach that want our guys to be healthy when they feel that they're 100%. They can go out there and compete and help their teammates. Now, leading up to this game, Jalen is questionable for sure. He had a non-contact practice, which was pretty good. And then he practiced today, and we'll see how he responds tomorrow. And then that's why I say it's questionable.
Thanks.
You were kind of shaking your head when Andrew mentioned the last. How do you just plan to try to get the team to bounce back and kind of not parallel what happened last year with the loss right before the new year and then not making
Yes. Great question. It's based on, I'm going to go back and review some things and seeing what I, as a head coach and my staff, what we can do better when it comes to our players coming off a break. I'll look at the schedule. I'll look at, enough practice time. I'll look at off days. I will review everything because the last 2 years, how we came off a break, we did not respond well. And some would say, it's resulted on, the losing the ball games. But I think it's more than just that. Preparation is so important, and it's easy where it's a small margin where you can have some type of slippage, whether it's mentally or physically. And I'm going to, do my homework and see what I can do best and better as a coach. Now, I was shaking my head because, I felt like I'm speaking of is, Manise State, their toughness, their grit was so present and it was infused on us. And I say we shied away from it. And, is that possibly fatigue where we felt they play harder and we couldn't match their energy? Or is that based on the fact that we was not in great shape where we, of course, who tried to play with the grit, the nastiness, the toughness, being the most physical, did we not have enough energy to show that type of level of commitment on the floor for 40 minutes. So that's why I say it's going to go back to me looking back the last 2 years and seeing what I can do better with the scheduling as well as preparation.
And just to follow up there,
Coach, speaking of, go ahead.
mentioned the fatigue. Do you have any concerns with the relatively short bench you guys have been running and how that impacts your ability, especially in games like the Florida one that went to overtime?
Well, do I have concern with overall everything, and to be real with you, and that goes with injury. That of course, think about to the playing time, of load management. I look at the amount of bodies that we have, guys coming off injury. Can they play right away? I just want try to be very careful and respectful of everyone. But we had Jalen, who played limited minutes in the Florida game. He was just coming off of an injury, and he wasn't, but he gave his best he could out there. But he wasn't his normal self. But our bench, yes, they're going to be truly needed. We know we have the now the conference games in the Big Ten. We have great coaches, special talented players. Coaches do a great job of doing a really good job of scouting and trying to take away some of your strengths. And so what we have to do is make sure that everyone with all hands on deck is ready.
Yes, Juwan, now that you have the calendar has turned to 2024, fully moving into Big Ten play, obviously you had the two early on. How would you assess the first portion of this season, where you are, and how you're set up, and is there a concern level about your positioning as it is towards March?
Well, we don't like to look ahead too much. We take one game at a time, and we always look on how we can, of course, take care of the day before we move to tomorrow. And we focus on our practice today and game prep for Minnesota tomorrow, and then we'll take it, like I said, by winning, today, not, what's happening in the March. Now, getting back to the meat and potatoes of your question, yes, I am not happy with our record. I'm not happy with some of the losses that we've had. I'm not going to come up here and fake it, or I never will. Some of those tough losses, and some have been, close games. dating back to Oregon, looking at that game, Florida, that game, Indiana, those games that, I feel that, it was just one or two possessions that we needed to have that we, fell short of. And that's the room of improvement that we must grow in. And I trust that we will.
Hey, Juwan, just kind of building off that, do you think this split between non-conference and conference play almost allows the team a mental reset, especially heading into the new year?
Well, I mean, like I said earlier, you just look forward to winning the day. And that's always been my mantra with the team. And now, fresh start, you can go with all these cliches and all that, but it's about the competition that you are fighting for and the competition that's going to be showed on Thursday. We have to take care of what we are, of course, able to take care of, and that is take accountability of our energy and effort from start to finish.
Juwan, if you don't mind looking a little bit ahead to this weekend's game at the Palestra, if you can remind me kind of how it came to be.
Yes.
I know it's a different coaching staff now at Penn
Right.
State. Did they approach you? Was Coach Martelli's roots
Great
there
question.
in mind? Yeah.
Yeah. Drew, that's a great question. And Coach Shrewsbury, who's now the head coach at Notre Dame, he approached me about, what are my thoughts on playing the game at the Palestra? And, I was like, wow, light bulb went off. I'm like, oh, I know he's going with this. And his thinking was, and I'm not taking full ownership of it. It was, it'd be good for the old man. That's the word he used, and, Coach knows, Coach will love that. And I said, you know what? Yes, he will. Let's do it. Let's play the game at Palestra. And they did it before with, I believe, Purdue. And so I felt that this would be a great game for us to play at the Palestra, a very historic place. Coach Martelli, I'm speaking of, has always talked about the Palestra and how special place it is. Over the years, how many teams have played there, different level of coaches, the games that it was played and how, like the Villanovas and obviously the Penns and many others, and how cool of a setting that it is. And I said, this will be great for Coach as, a guy who's from Philly and, the East Coast. I didn't say Philly. The entire East Coast love Coach Phil Martelli. And, by us going back to Philadelphia, I said, you know what, this is a no-brainer. I would do this for, my guy. And so that's how, it all came about. And now that Coach Shrewsbury is at Notre Dame, no, I did not call Penn State and try to change it or anything like that. I'm so happy that their new coach took it as an opportunity to keep it going, and I really respect him for that. And so, because by the way, that takes away a home game from him. But it doesn't mean that their fans won't be there. I'm sure they would travel because this is a special game, and it's also Michigan. We travel well, but at the end of the day, it's for Coach Martelli.
Thanks. Just kind of last thing on that. I know players get tickets to road games. Do you expect Phil to try to acquire as many of those as possible, given his family and friends that I'm sure want to attend?
I'm sure he's working it for sure. I don't know how many he's going to buy, but he's got enough money. He can. If he has to spend some extra money for some extra tickets, I know Coach will do everything he can to make sure that some of his friends and family and friends are in the building. I will always go with family first. And we will make sure that he get enough tickets. He can have some of my tickets for sure.
This crossover sort of has me thinking. Some of us, I guess it's the most sort of first world problem you can have. Some of us won't get to go to the Palestra because we'll be covering the national championship, right?
Right.
So my question for you is just when thinking about historic venues, we were just at the Rose Bowl as well. I'm sure you have thoughts about Michigan football making the game when you watched, your own thoughts, and then I guess just how that reflects on you and how much more maybe that makes you want to get back to that level, or just where you took in the game and your whole thoughts about Michigan football right now.
So, my mindset was, let's get together as a team and let's watch it. But then I was thinking, I'm like, I need to be dialed in, and I can't have no distractions while I'm watching this game because, I feel that I have to be in the right seat with the right clothes on to watch and lock into every play that's on the floor, whether it's defense, offense, special teams, you name it. And so I needed to focus. So, I said, well, you know what? We all will watch the game, and make that decision on our own. And so some players watched it, together, invited, other guys to their apartments, which I thought was pretty cool. Me and my wife, we watched it, but then there were times when she sat next to me when the second half, when Alabama made their run, when they had the ball in the third quarter, I felt that she brought some bad luck. So she had to change her seat. And with that, it was beautiful to see, everyone talk about. Granted, I I have so much respect for Nick Saban, great coach, Hall of Famer, um, and he does an amazing job preparing his teams. And I know in 4 weeks we all were a little nervous about what his preparation would be, and he did a hell of a job with he and his staff did a hell of a job with that. But we don't give enough credit to Coach Harbaugh and his staff. And I say we, just collectively, just not you guys, just in general. Like his preparation with he and his staff and players was special. And it was great to see, when we needed to score in the second half, we scored. And when we needed to get a stop, we got our stops. And that shows the mental toughness when the game was going. And like I said earlier, in third quarter, when Alabama, was making their run, our mindset, our attitude did not change. And it goes to the fact that how our coach and staff prepared our players and also how the players who are the leaders kept everyone mentally stable. And I of course, learned a lot from that. And I feel our players learned a lot from it as well. We took away, mental stability no matter what. When things are not going your way, how you have to stay locked in and just finish. And with that, I think Coach Harbaugh, I know Coach Harbaugh and his staff is the best coaching staff in the country. And we have one more game to play, and we're going to play against a tough team in Washington. And I know that I got to figure this out as far as how I'm gonna watch the game and what clothes I'm gonna wear because I gotta bring some good energy to our football team.
Thank you very much.
Long-winded answer, but I'm wired that way. I'm just a big fan of the football program, and obviously Michigan in general. I'm a Michigan man. When you're a Michigan man, you just bleed maize and blue, and no matter who's out there representing that maize and blue, no matter what sport it is, you cheer hard for them.
Hey, Juwan, I wanted to go back to the Palestra game real quick. I know that's a bucket list place for a lot of people. I guess, have you ever been there before?
Yes, I have. I took my son, Jason, his close friend and high school teammate from Miami there for a basketball camp that Penn was hosting, and got a chance to sit in the stands, walk the floor, and sit inside the locker rooms and just walk the building, and I was impressed. You can tell that it kind of remind you of, in my opinion, like those historic buildings that have had a lot of history, like the Boston Garden and the New Madison Square Garden, the Yankee Stadium, Chicago Cubs, Wrigley Field, and Boston Red Sox, Fenway Park. It reminds me of those type of mystique places.
And obviously, Phil Martelli's very familiar with it. Has he already been maybe telling the players, I guess, what that experience is going to be like, or what they can kind of expect going in there?
Not yet. We haven't talked about it yet, but it's coming. It's coming.
Anybody have anything else for Coach? Okay, Coach, we really appreciate your time this afternoon. Have a great prep, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you. Go Blue.
Thanks, Juwan.